Here's Eli Manning on the Bucs defense on Monday Night Football.
Their front four does not get a lot of pressure. If they're just rushing forward, they're not going to get to the quarterback very often, but they do have some exotic blitzes. I mean, they're bringing all sorts of people. They love to bring different blitzes and play zone behind it. They're not a man team. They're going to play zone. They'll play shell, and so they can get you into some hots. They can get you into bringing overloads, and so you have to get the ball out quick. You might be able to get it protected, but they do a good job. It's complex. It's different. You never know where guys are coming from, and so they can get you into forcing some balls, and that's what they did last time. Andy was not the quarterback. It was Jameis Winston, but a lot of turnover, especially third down. Expect some sort of pressure.
Every game is talked about like it's a chess match, but what Kyle Shanahan has here is a major chess match with a quarterback who just is, for all did Trent Williams say Brock Purdy's like a 15-year vet, or whoever said that this week? But he's not, right? For all of the qualities that he has not seen as many. He's not been in the fire in the NFL the way that Jimmy Garoppolo has.
I think Kyle said after the game he thought his best throw was when they basically all out blitzed and he hit Kittle on the play last against who the hell did they just play? My mind's not working. Who the 49ers just beat with Brock Purdy? Who'd they play on Sunday? I can't think. I mean,
the Miami Dolphins, John.
Yeah, okay. Miami Dolphins. It would have taken me a while to get that. This is where, again, Todd Bowles is probably a better defensive coordinator than any guy that he saw in the Big 12. But when they talk about having a lot of experience, they don't mean that it just translates to when you become a starter in the NFL. But it does mean that you've seen stuff in game environments, right? Like you have put game plans together as the Iowa State starter in the Big 12 for 4 straight years, all week, put a game plan together. Then you go into a game and you see different things and you adapt. Like, to me, I think that's like the nitty gritty of what coaches, you've prepared, led up to a game, and then you've made adjustments in games and you've seen all these different defenses. So Todd Bowles listen, he's not a very good head coach. He's pretty abysmal. Like the guy, he's a number 2. Dennis Allen, same thing. Good defensive coordinators, bad head coaches. But he is really good defensive coordinator. I think it was widely considered when they were all defensive coordinators, it was like him and Vic just felt like do it a little differently. Like Vic's never been a big blitz guy, runs a 3-4 defense, and Todd's just kind of all out, but it works. Never forget, they did lose their tackles. They destroyed Andy Reid in that Super Bowl. That was a full-blown ass kicking. And it felt like, I think did Tom win the MVP? But it felt like, remember, I had a Devin White ticket. The defense, that was Devin a defensive performance.
Did he have a
Devin White pick?
Yeah, it felt like he had a chance to win that.
Had like 15 tackles. But it was, they are, and you watch them now, you and I were going through, like, their defense is pretty good. Like, I do not just, the Niners I don't expect 150 yards on the ground. I think it's going to be hard to get to the 100-yard mark. So you are going to be in passing situations, because even if Kyle tries to hammer the run, like, it'd be 2nd and 10, right? So you're just going to hammer it again and be 3rd and 9, and then you're going to pass. And what's going to happen when you pass and they know you're passing? He's going to fucking bring the heat.
Yeah, they're giving up 4.5 yards a carry. They give up a lot of rushing yards, but they are not going to feel, at least, it's on Brock Purdy to threaten them, to make them feel threatened with the pass game, and not turn the ball over. I've been saying this all week, and it really applies to this game. The recipe for the 49ers doesn't change with Brock Purdy taking over for Jimmy. The question is, can Brock Purdy replicate Jimmy's recipe? Jimmy's recipe doesn't look all that challenging, right? It doesn't look all that complicated, but it is. I think it is challenging. It's challenging to not throw interceptions, which, Jimmy, he's tried to throw a couple and he threw one and it got called back, but in the final tally, he's not been throwing picks. And
good on third down, right? Passing the ball.
Yeah, it's like I know the recipe, it feels like an easy recipe to duplicate, but I do think that's part of Garoppolo is he hasn't made mistakes. So, and he's made plus plays. Now, Purdy made plus plays last week, but the challenge of being an NFL quarterback is making the plus plays without the negative plays, right? If you put an average quarterback out there for 17 weeks and let him just throw the ball around, he'll throw touchdowns, but he'll also throw a lot of interceptions. Your average QB, if you just cut him loose. And so that to me is like, how much can Kyle really manage this game? How much can he really anticipate what the Bucs are going to do defensively and have the counter ready so Brock Purdy's not trying to figure it out with the play clock at 3, at 2, at 1, and now they missed a protection, and here comes some guy free off the edge. If you heard what Eli said, he said you're going to miss protections and guys are going to be coming free, which we saw. That's part of how Jimmy got hurt last week. It's part of that play with Kittle. He had a free rusher, Purdy, when he made the play that Kyle Shanahan complimented him for. Like, that's, to me, is what's scary. And then what happens in that moment? Does Brock go, time to make a play and make you pay, baby? Brett Favre's coming. Or does he go, all right, we're going to live to fight another down. I'm going to trust my defense against Tom Brady and whatever. We're just going to stick to the game plan. The Bucs, the last 4 games, and this is where we say, like, this is the Niners recipe. The Bucs, the last 4 games, have averaged, they've allowed 1.5 touchdowns per game. They allowed 1 touchdown last week. They allowed 2 touchdowns the week before. They allowed 2 touchdowns the game before, which was the Seahawks game in Germany. And they allowed 1 touchdown the week before that. So they've allowed 1, 2, 2, 1. That's how many touchdowns they've allowed.
And it was 21-3 across the pond going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, the 2 touchdowns the Seahawks scored were in the fourth quarter.
I would imagine if you look at some of Brock Purdy's his history as the Iowa State starter, he didn't see many defensive coordinators that would just stand everyone up in the line of scrimmage. 5 or 6 guys at the line of scrimmage just standing up. Todd Bowles does that a lot. He did it all the time. It felt like every other snap against the Saints, like Vita Vea's moving around here, standing up. Like, the guy's a 340-pound defensive tackle, and now he's a pretty special athlete. But, I mean, he has some versatile chess pieces. I brought up the third down percentages so far in the NFL through, whatever, week 13 weeks. It makes sense, the top 4 teams. Basically from 51% to 46%. The Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Eagles are 1 through 4. The 49ers are 5th. That's a pretty, you're with the 2 best teams in the league, you would say. Actually, the 3 best teams in the league, right? I would put them, the 4 best teams in the league. The Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals, Eagles. Whatever order you want to put those in. Those are the 4 best teams in the league. I think if you just ask people that watch the NFL, Eagles are clearly the best team in the NFC. And then, those 3 teams in the AFC are on a different tier than the entire other AFC. And they're the best third down team. Well, how did the 49ers flip their fucking season? Jimmy Garoppolo started being really good. And part of where he's really good, he doesn't throw a lot of touchdowns. He's not pressing the field down the field. He's good on third down. Well, if you're good on third down and your defense is the best defense in the league, what's going to happen? You're going to win more games than you lose, right? That's really what they've done since week 1. Because their record since week 1 is 8-3. That game that they lost to the Bears. And really, after the Bronco game, if we did, I don't know what the math is, but they're probably like 7-1, 7-2. I mean, they've won a lot of games after that because they start 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be, 7-2.
Yeah.
And I think third down, because offensively, they're not scoring 35 fucking points a game. They're not winning in shootouts. They are not allowing you to score, and they are efficient on offense. They're not efficient in the red zone, right?
No, they're 53% in the red zone, touchdowns.
But they are really efficient. To me, if you're in that crew of teams, and really the Bears, kind of weird or an outlier. The other teams that are kind of just in the top 10 are the Cowboys, the Ravens, Seattle. Well, what do all these teams have in common? They're 8-4. They're 7-5. What are the Cowboys? 9-3. All these teams' records are really good. And I think the other thing, like the Bills, the Bengals, the Eagles, the Cowboys, these teams have good defenses too. So you're headed to 11 wins. Now, I think the question is really, but if you're listening this Friday or Saturday, once Sunday hits, it's 5 days. That's a lot of football for Brock Purdy in a 5-day stretch.
You're saying before you play the Seahawks on Thursday?
No, I'm just saying you have a 5-day stretch of 2 games that this percentage, if it dips a little bit, it could go the wrong way. These are 2, you could lose these 2 games, right? I don't think you and I can envision it. Anyone listening can envision it. They could easily lose to Tampa, to me, 17-14.
Yeah,
right?
It's not that hard to envision because every Sunday, for the most part, you watch them play a game that they could lose, including the game they just played against Miami, including the game they played against New Orleans. I know they didn't give up a point. They won by 13, but if you experienced the game, there were points in that game where you thought they might lose today, right?
Because here's what I know. If you lose to Tampa, regardless whether Seattle wins or loses, right? If they win, you would have the same record. If they lose, they'd still be a game behind. The pressure in that Seattle game is beyond immense. And potentially, if you win and Seattle wins, nothing really changes. There's one where you can take somewhat of a breath, right? You win, they lose. You got a 2-game lead on them. Even if they beat you at home, you're still in first place in the division. And ultimately, like, it's not as big of a loss because it's not. It wouldn't be good, but like, if I tell you you lose a road game in December on Thursday night, it's very understandable. But if that game is what feels like for all the marbles, another thing, statement that people use that I don't know how long since a lot of people played marbles, but that's probably the 50s and the 60s. Not many people are playing marbles, but that's a good statement. It's an easy one to use, and I think most people know what you're talking about. This just having a rookie quarterback making his second career start on the road in a game that's just going to be fucking bananas in terms of noise. Probably be the loudest game he's ever been involved in. And he's probably played in some pretty loud stadiums, right? Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, at Iowa State. He's probably played some loud games against Iowa.
TCU, I'm sure. I mean,
yeah.
West Virginia.
So I'm not saying he's not, and this gets back to the experience. Like, he has been in environments
Texas,
where it's really, really loud. I think when he was there, Texas was pretty shitty. He probably never even lost to Texas.
I mean, Tom Herman's Texas team went 7-3. What'd they do that year?
Yeah, so maybe lost to him. But you got to win. Like, to me, this is huge. Ideally, if you're, for the Niners and for Brock Purdy's sake, you win, somehow Seattle gets upset, and you can just be cool. You just kind of let it, just good experience for them for the playoffs. But it's not like if you lose 20-10, like whatever, right? Because there's no whatever if it's a 1-game lead or you have the same record. It'd be devastating.
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. If you win this week and take a 2-game lead because Seattle loses on Seattle and then they beat you Thursday, it's still just a 1-game. You don't have the head-to-head tiebreaker anymore, and you still have 3 games left, including the Commanders and the Raiders. One of them is on the road. Another one on I guess it's not a short week because you play Christmas Saturday. But you would be able to breathe a little easier. But every time you think you're about to breathe easy in most divisional races, with the exception of teams that are like 11-1, for the most part, you don't really get to breathe easy with a month left in the season, unless you're an 11-1.
Yeah, it's not like baseball where you can have a 7-game lead, and it's like, for you to pass me, it's kind of crazy things have to happen.
So, it just feels like they are playing playoff games every week, which is what they would have been doing with Jimmy anyway. But there've been a lot of compliments for Brock this week, and a lot have been, I haven't heard anything that I think is undeserved, but anyone that's watched football a long time, as most people listening to this or watching this have, you just know 1 game is not who you are. It's weeks. It's weeks. It is a long game. It is not a short game. And the long game is far from over. And the Niners, again, the good thing for the Niners is this is the way they have played. Their defense already knows the deal. Their offensive line, like, everyone knows the deal. The question is, can Brock just play that way?
And you would say Kyle's other 2 playoff seasons, this is how it went, right? They got in on a last play to win the division in Seattle when they were 13-3. And then last year, they literally got in an overtime game to get into the playoffs. Like, so they have their guys are used to the pressure, just not the quarterback, who is used to pressure, right? He played on a top 15, 20 team when he was at Iowa State, and they were playing in big games, but it's just different in the NFL.
Yeah. Well, I think part of his college experience was they won and lost because of him, right? That is not the 40. I mean, the quarterback does affect if you win or lose, is that without question. Like that 3rd down percentage you gave Jimmy Garoppolo, he was playing well. There's just no way around it. He was playing well.
Well, think about the other 4 quarterbacks that are above them: Josh Allen, Burrow, Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. Is that like, if the Heisman Trophy was the equivalent in the MVP, those would be the 4 guys, probably, right? Like if you just took people for the MVP, the quarterback.
Yeah, Gino would be like Michael Penix, left out, and everybody would be pissed.